I remember Carl Mecklenburg because he wore a face mask with like a bar down the middle. Like he was an old school kind of tough guy, right? He wore number 77 for the Denver Broncos. And Mecklenburg, what I remember was, man, was he tough. Man, was he nasty. He was part of the Orange Crush defense, and they played in a couple Super Bowls. Can you read his tweet? Do you have that tweet in front of you there, Jay Stu? Because he tweeted about Russell Wilson. And I will point out that, look, generally when you leave, but it's usually like 6 months to a year after you leave, dudes will start sniping and taking shots. Happens at any business. You know? Well, I thought you loved me. Well, when you're here, but now you're the enemy. But this is Carl Mecklenburg, who's an all-time great Denver Bronco, took to social media and tweeted this about Russell Wilson. He
said, Russell Wilson isn't a leader. The foolishness that went on in his first year at Denver with a private coach's own office at the facility and family at training camp when other players didn't have those privileges proved his self-centeredness. Mic drop.
This is a little bit of what we talked about. I mean, you listen to Aaron Rodgers. You know, there's that podcast now where Aaron Rodgers is talking about Jordy Nelson and this fish route that he would run. And you listen to how so many of the Jets teammates, even Packers teammates, like the contract thing and some of the other stuff, guys stayed away from. But in terms of Aaron Rodgers as a dude, as a quarterback, like guys are in. Guys are in. I mean, I don't think Derek Carr is even particularly good, but, you know, Devontae Adams wanted to play for him because they're boys from way back, going back to the Fresno State days. Right? Baker Mayfield's a guy that the media can run hot and cold with, but for the most part, like his guys, they'll fight for him. OBJ kind of exposed him as he wasn't good enough. Right? But he's a guy when you have an underdog club, guys buy in. And you remember what he did with the Rams going back last year where he had no time to prep. He's running the 2-minute drill. They win a game on Thursday Night Football, I think. And he was in the facility like for one day. It was crazy. And my point has always been that you can't really fool players. Players know who phonies are. They're like a great if the world had the type of instincts that players have about other players, there would be no one that would scam you on 4-card Monte or the 3-card Monte. You know what 3-card Monte is, right?
Kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
I know the reference. I don't know what the specifics of the game.
You don't?
I don't think so. I have a feeling it entails 3 cards.
It's like that. They'll do it on a box in a big city where you have a guy and he'll go, "Hey, look at the card. You see the card?" And you move them all around, and then you got to pick out the card, which card there is, and there's a trick to it, right? That's 3-card Monte. Monty, did you know that? Have you ever heard of 3-card Monte? Have you ever seen 3-card Monte? You've never been like in any city where there's a guy and he's like, "Hey, there we go. You know, but can you find the ace? Can you find the ace? Can you find the ace?" And all of a sudden you're watching, you're like, "Oh, the ace is right there." And you flip it over and it's the 2 of hearts. Like, how do you do that? 3-card Monte.
No. I've never experienced that. I wish I have.
There
Sounds fun.
You've seen it at sporting events, right? When they do the where does the ball hide? They got like a little
the shell game stuff.
The shell game?
Yes.
Basically what it is.
That's what it is.
Same thing. Okay, different card version of the same thing, right? Where you see the answer appears to be obvious. And my point is, like, I just don't think you can, and I even think, like, all of these signs tell us that, right? Because the office thing isn't that big a deal. Peyton Manning had an office. Ben Roethlisberger had a secret door. Do you guys know this? A secret door in the locker room where he had his own kind of setup back there, right? And what I was told was, like, his last year, he just went back there and nap or read like hunting magazines. Like, that's it. Like, throw on hunting shows and just back there doing his deal. But like having this special treatment is kind of a quarterback thing. But it's just the way in which all the messages are delivered. And, it's like you can have a quarterback coach. You can have your family around. You can have all these things. But like, all of them at once when you haven't played a down. And then the big thing is if you can't play, they don't care. That's really what it comes down to. Like, if you can play and you can get us the ball and you can make us win games, like, you don't care that much. I'd like you to be a bunch of dudes that can sit around and talk and tell stories, and it's awesome. But when you factor in they don't think he can play with a sense of it's not arrogance, it's just an artificialness. Right? Like, he's the spokesperson for Russell Wilson INC instead of just being Russell Wilson. And the greatest example of it was last week when he's, during the combine, he does the I Am Athlete podcast, and he's like, I'd like to win 2 more Super Bowls. I'd like to go back to Denver. Like, dude, you knew 3 months ago, like, you're not going back to Denver. It's not happening. It's not happening. You're not currying any favor. There's nobody going like, whoa, wait, Russell wants to come back. Well, by all means, let's do that. Like, no, that ship had sailed. And then even the story of the day, which you heard from Monte, which is the Steelers, are interested on some level in talking to him. That is clear as day news that has come from Russell Wilson's camp. What's the win in the Steelers? I know Mitchell Trubisky signed today with the Buffalo Bills. He was one of their backups. They still have 2 quarterbacks under contract. They got the NFL draft coming up, and they may well want Russell Wilson. But what is the win in letting the world know that they're talking to Russell Wilson? None. Real G's move in silence, like neighbor and sleigh. Hey? But this is just Russell Wilson again and his people trying to win some PR battle. Oh, you said nobody wants us. The Steelers want us. And maybe they do. And maybe they do want to talk to you. That's possible. Really possible. On the other hand, it could just be a formality interview and like, we're going to see what's available in the draft. We'll see what's out there. We'll see. Because the plastic stuff, the artificial stuff, the coaching, and I know he didn't have his quarterback coach, the nutritionist, his own workout guy, the entourage stuff. You know where that doesn't work? Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It never works when you're making like $1 million or $2 million a year. It didn't work when he's making 40. Ain't gonna make it work when he makes $2 million a year. I think what's happened is he's been exposed, and I guess I feel some sympathy for him. But these were, issues that, and I here's where I feel sympathy for him. I have no doubt that when you switch jobs, you're trying to kind of figure out, how am I? Like, everyone says, well, I just want to be myself. Like, all right, but you switch jobs. You're a Super Bowl champion. You're married to a pop star, right? You're one of the faces of the NFL. I do kind of get it. Like, you want to, when you show up, that's how I'm going to be. I did this when I got to CBS, where when I would go to games, I would always wear sneakers. And I didn't ask anybody. I just, like, what's the difference? Like, you don't only see me from the waist up. So I'd only wear sneakers. And some of the college players love the shoes. My shoe game was tight at the time. And then at some point, my boss called me and was like, hey, dude, can you not wear sneakers? I was like, does it matter? He's like, it does to us. And what I probably should have done, there's a book called The First 90 Days. I've recommended this several times on different shows. But First 90 Days, and it's just basically like what to do when you go to a completely different culture. And the idea is your first 90 days, you kind of absorb the culture. Don't go start doing your own thing. This is how I do stuff. And that's the mistake that he made. Instead, he started doing the I'm Russell Wilson, I'm a star. That's how I got myself out of Seattle. And all those guys are like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then you don't play well. And 2 coaches don't think you're good enough. And here we are.